Start our recording, turn our video on. Welcome to Wine Down Wednesday. This is the Barbera Bash. And as you guys know from all the classes, how much I love Italian varietals and Italian wine. And I'm so psyched to explore this varietal that I love so much, both as it presents in the New World, which is America and Australia, South America, and the Old World, mostly Italy, and we'll talk about all of that. I'm excited to have you here tonight. If you haven't checked it in the chat window, please let us know where you're zooming in from so we can all connect. Don't forget, I put that link in the chat window for our after party. I'll get it in there later so you can join us if you want on camera, and we can all see each other face to face once we've had our amazing tasting. So awesome. Thank you so much for everybody for being here. Get your glasses ready. It's go time. All right, I know there's a couple new people here. So just to review, my name is Laurie Forster. My business is called The Wine Coach, and it's my mission to demystify wine one glass at a time. I wrote a book called The Sipping Point and do a podcast under the same name. I'm a certified sommelier and also sometimes comedian. So I do that on the side and just try to make wine fun and approachable. So I'm glad you're here. There's no silly question. Ask anything you want. And let's just have some fun with Barbera. The Gregs are here from Oregon and Laurie Bacon from Marriottsville. Thank you so much. Laurie and Cadillac from Easton, welcome to the crew. All right, I think I talked about it before we got started. First things first, we're using the Zoom webinar tool. And you wanna definitely be right now, hopefully seeing a video of me and a slide screen to the side. There's a couple different views. You may have to play around with it a little bit so you can get it to go. But the chat window is where we can communicate. Next to the to button, you can decide to chat with me directly and privately or chat to everyone. You decide. Q&A button so you can ask a question. It makes it a little bit easier for me to maintain that. And you can raise your hand and unraise your hand when I'm asking various questions or soliciting input. Love to get that because I can't see you yet. So talk to me. Anyway, we're gonna have that after party where I can see you, and make sure you get the link for that before I end the meeting. Going on to the next screen. I think most of you have joined the Facebook. We have a private group just for my virtual alumni. Anybody who's been to any of the Wine Down Wednesdays or the Pick the Perfect Wine Every Time online class that we did. If you haven't joined, I always put the links in my emails, and it's a great place for us to connect in between our Wine Down Wednesdays. So please join me over there if you will. All right, I love to start out, as you know, with something to sip on. And this time, I thought this was quite appropriate. It's an old Italian proverb that I have in my book. One barrel of wine can create more miracles than a church full of saints. This is not to be sacrilege, but just that wine is so amazing. And look how it's bringing us together and making this crazy quarantine week 80 or whatever it is so much more fun. So I believe in the healing powers of wine, and I know you guys do too because you're here. We're gonna get started with tasting some wine, but if you haven't been on one of my webinars before, tasting is so important. It's the most important way to learn about wine, and we really do try to go through the steps. I don't maybe belabor them as I might with some of my wine pro peers, but always you want to start out by looking at your wine, move to the smell, the taste is the sip. Believe it or not, that's the third part you do. Then we actually talk about the wine, the body, the aromas, the acidity or tannin if it's red, and then we decide if we like it or not. And I believe you can't really do that decision without actually having food. So that's why I always give you guys food suggestions. I'm gonna start with the Rosé Bubbly from Crow Vineyards. Some of you have that. I don't know if all of you do, it depends on where you live, but I'm gonna start out talking about that. Deciding is with the food. So I'd love to know as we go along in the webinar, what foods or snacks you made to have with your wine. I always get excited about that. So no further ado. Let's talk a little bit about Barbera, just so you guys can get started. If you have a rosé or the bubbly rosé from Crow, go ahead and start in on that if you want. If you're already moving to reds, that's cool too. I'm not going to stop you. This is about doing what you want. Leanne, I'm so glad you're here and you're having grilled ham. Great with rosé. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, Barbera facts. Originates in Piedmont, Italy. One of my favorite places in the world, absolutely. It's up in the northwest part of Italy on the border of Switzerland. If you have not been to Piedmont, it sort of does not do the marketing job that Tuscany does, but to me, it is the best place in Italy. You will absolutely love the wines and the people and the food. It is a place to go once we're able to get back to traveling to Italy. I highly recommend. And the Barbera grape, which is pictured here, red grape, of course, originates from that area. There's some talk that it's DNA related to a Mourvedre, which is a Rhone Valley grape from France. It has a very deep color, and we'll see that when we move to our red wines, and also lots of polyphenols in the skins, which are great for health, heart healthy properties for wine. So love, love, love. In Italy, it's considered the everyday man's grape because my OMG wine or my death row wine from Piedmont would be Barolo or Barbaresco. Those are expensive wines. You can't afford to drink those every day. So the everyday people, the farmers, the people making wine, they're drinking Barbera. And it's affordable, it's easy to love. It did go through a bit of a problem time in the mid 80s. There was a bit of a scandal with some unscrupulous winemakers adding methanol to their wines, and about 30 people died from these doctored wines. So it had I guess a PR problem, but that has all been solved. We've moved on from there. And Barbera can be made in both an oaked and a stainless steel version, especially when we're talking about red. The rosés we're having are all done with stainless steel. And then we'll talk about the reds because some of them are oaked and some of them are not. And it's just fun to compare. All right, I'll move on to my next slide. Where is Barbera planted? All over the world. The biggest plantings in Italy. The US would be next. Australia, believe it or not, another great place to visit if you get the chance. And some in Argentina. Those are some of the key places. Within the US, California, Washington State. There's a little bit in Oregon. And then of course, Maryland, I have down there at the bottom, and some of us explore that. Some of us have Washington State and California, and we're gonna see how those stack up to the Italians. All right, I'm starting out with the sparkling Barbera Rosé, and I absolutely love this wine. It's made with the method traditionnel, or method champenois, and you can see right here, I have my stemless flute where I'm enjoying it. It's got these beautiful tiny bubbles. I don't know if you can see them through the camera, but if you remember from our first class, for those of you who were with me for the springtime in Paris class, the key to this method champenois or method traditionnel is that these bubbles are created right in the bottle during secondary fermentation. And so it is a more artisanal, more expensive way to go. And so what we do here, these are the grapes of Champagne, but we make Barbera Rosé from this, and we vinify that. And then we put it in the bottle with a little sugar and yeast, and we cap that with a crown cap, which is like a beer cap. And what happens then is it starts off a secondary fermentation. One of the byproducts of fermentation is CO2. Because we put that crown cap on it, the CO2 is captured in the bottle, but then the yeast cells, as they die, will collect in the neck of the bottle, and we do something called degorgement. We get rid of those yeast cells. We put in a little bit of wine and sugar, and the amount to which we put in before we put the cork in determines if it's brut or demi-sec or sec. And then of course we have our finished bubbly ready to go to market. But it is definitely a more expensive way to go. When we get Michael on the line, which is gonna happen very shortly, I'd love to talk to him a little bit about this because they do this by hand. I've been out in Strongsburg in California where I've seen the machines do the disgorgement, but this is actually being done by hand at Crow Vineyards, and I'd love to know a little bit more about maybe some of the crazy things that happen when that's going on, because I'm sure there is stories. All right, so what I love about this is it really is, you know, a nice dry sparkling rosé. We've got strawberry, we've got cherry flavors, a little bit of melon even, and it just finishes clean and dry. It's one of my favorites. I absolutely love it. Joanne is loving their bubbly with grilled shrimp and Crow London broil. Yum. I guess I should have done the class from your house tonight, Joanne. You're making me hungry. All right, what do we want to eat with sparkling wine? We kind of went through this week one, but for those of you who weren't with us, she's already doing it right. Seafood is absolutely a great option. You can do light pastas, you can do sushi, anything in that. If you have a sweet sparkling wine, it's great with desserts. This is not sweet, but your white meats, your sushis, really light pastas even. I've done an event where every course is served with sparkling wine, and absolutely possible and delicious. So some ideas: lobster or crab if you're in Maryland. That's what we prefer. Real quick before we move into our non-bubbly rosé, we're moving into phase one recovery here in Maryland, and I know every state is going to be different, but eventually we will be going to restaurants again. At least this is what I need to survive, to believe this. And ordering wine off a restaurant wine list is a question I'm always getting. And the key is to start out, and while you're sipping this, and I don't know if I mentioned 3 days this spends on the Barbera skins to give it the beautiful cold soak color that it has. But what you want to understand about a restaurant wine list is the way it's organized. That's the key. Some are organized by grape, all Chardonnays, all Cabernets, all Pinot Noirs. Some are organized by place, country. France is here, Italy's here. That's the key. Because if you know, oh God, I love Pinot Noir, and with a varietal list, you can go right to it. With a geography list, you're going to have to look around, look at France and Burgundy, look at Oregon and the Willamette, which we've touched on already, California and the regions that do really great Pinot Noir, Russian River, those sorts of areas. That's real key. Sometimes you can use the bin numbers. There are numbers corresponding to every wine that restaurants will use for inventory purposes. And they're very helpful when you know you want the wine, but you're not sure how to pronounce it. Have you guys, raise your hand if you've ever been there before. You know the wine you want to order, but you're just not sure how to pronounce the name of it or the name of the region. And so those bin numbers are your friends. They absolutely can, and pointing if you're not exactly sure. And then hopefully any great server, som, even if you say it wrong, they're going to say it back to you and kind of help you along in a nice way. That's at least my hope. So also markups at restaurants, anywhere from, I have 2.5 to 4 times, but 2 to 4 times the wholesale of the wine. So they're doing that because they have invested in the inventory, order the wine, they're serving it to you. There's all kinds of costs associated with maintaining that wine list. So it's good to know that that markup is there. If you're looking at a $40 wine, it's probably a $15 to $20 wine for wholesale. And so that's just a little gauge for you. Most of the times they're not trying to rip you off, but it's good to know that the lower priced wines many times have the highest markup. So definitely go to the highest range that you feel comfortable, because as the wines get up into the mid and even the high cost wines, they're marked up less. And so sometimes that $25 bottle, that $30 bottle might be a $5 bottle of wine, not kidding. So it's just good to know what that range is, but you should always drink and pay what you're comfortable with. But it's just a little tip there for you. And you can call ahead. Most restaurants have their wine list on their website. You can have them fax or scan it to you. All types of ways you can kind of get a look at it before you get there. So you don't want to be embarrassed if you're taking somebody out and you don't want them to know that you only want to spend $50 or $70 on the wine. Am I the only one? I don't think so. All right. So if you're looking to find a great wine and you're on a budget, but you don't want anyone else at the table to know, what you want to do when you're holding the wine list and you have the server over your shoulder is point to a price of a wine that's in your range and say to the server, I'm looking at this wine, but I'm hoping that you have something more to suggest or something different to suggest. And any great server is going to realize that, okay, you just pointed to $65, $75, and they're going to recommend something, something in the right range. We just text you when we don't know. That's okay, Denise. You can text me when you don't know. They're going to suggest something in that 65 or 75 or whatever range you pointed to. It doesn't even have to be a wine you're considering, but you're just signaling to them, like, this is my range, and they'll help you out from there. I mean, that's what we're here for. We want to help you guys get a great wine that's not going to break the bank. All right. So now that we've all been enjoying, and raise your hand if you're loving this sparkling Barbera, if you got that from Crow. It's one of my absolute favorites, and I'm really enjoying it. But I want to bring Michael Zollo on. He is the winemaker at Crow Vineyards here in Maryland, but he also has made Barbera on the West Coast. So I thought he would be so amazing to bring on, since all of us are drinking Barbera from all over the world. So let me go ahead and see if I can do this right. I'm going to, I think you're already unmuted, right, Michael?
I am already unmuted. I just need you to start the video.
I'm going to make you a co-host, and I think you can start the video now.
Okay.
And you should be coming on. All right. We have the technology. Hey.
Awesome.
Michael Zollo, thank you so much for coming and joining us. As I mentioned, you're the winemaker now at Crow Vineyards in Kennedyville, Maryland, but you also grew up in a winemaking family. A lot of your family made wine in the basement, which many people do, right? You grew up in the Finger Lakes of New York, as I understand, and sort of took on that tradition and learning from your family. And spent some time on the West Coast. So we're super psyched. Let's all welcome Michael to Wine Down Wednesday. And you have seen both sides of Barbera. So I'm really excited for you to share all of that with us tonight.
Yeah, I will. All right. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. So thank you.
I talked a little bit about, I was reading, obviously I love this sparkling Barbera Rosé. And I was reading about your cold soak. I believe it said 3 days to get the color desired for you. Tell me a little bit about, because you do the process, the method traditional in a very, I don't know, manual's not the word, but old style, right?
Yeah, let's call it hands-on and artisanal, right? That's the buzzword, right?
I love it.
Basically everything is hand done here. We run the grapes down a sorter. They come in as whole clusters, and we run them down a sorter and bounce them off. So they're just whole berries. They're not crushed yet. And they're all hand sorted. Then they go through some rollers and they get broken open. And then we run them into the cold room and we chill them down to 31 degrees or so, sometimes colder. And we just let them soak. The colder you keep the grapes, the less extraction you get. So depending on timing, we were keeping the grapes pretty cold on this one. So 24 to 48 to 72 hours, depending on the color you're looking for. With Barbera, I tend to go a little bit further because it's a thinner skin grape and it doesn't leach a ton of color all at once. So I like to soak it as long as I can because I know I'm gonna lose a little on the back end after we settle it out and everything. So then like you mentioned, it gets fermented like a normal white wine would under cool conditions. We run it around 53 degrees in the fermentation. And that's just to extract as much flavor as we can out of it. That really helps with building aromatics with a long, slow fermentation that lasts around 19 days or so. We're picking the grapes, we pick the grapes at 3 different times. Earliest for the sparkling to maintain the acidity. Then we'll pick it for the rosé.
And that's where we're headed.
Exactly. I'm right with you.
Perfect.
And then we'll pick it for the red. And the reason that we stagger it like that is because as Barbera ripens, you see a precipitous drop in the acidity. On the East Coast, I'm finding that you see a drop in the acid more so earlier in the ripening stages than you would later. In California, we were picking it in the 24.5 brick range for Rosé. So we were in the 14.8% alcohol range for the Rosé even, because we didn't start to see that acidity start to drop down until we hit about 24 bricks. Here, I start to see it drop around 22, 23. So it makes for a lower alcohol wine that still preserves that bright fruit flavor that you get from Rosé.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're mentioning, so we might as well move on over to the slide. In addition to the sparkling rosé, you have a still rosé from Barbera. You talked a little bit about the difference in growing it. Both of these, though, made in a dry style. Sometimes people still think if they're drinking pink, it's going to be a sweet style. What is your favorite thing to pair with this Barbera rosé?
Definitely some sort of soft cheese, anything that I love fruit with cheese. So like a peach with even some sharper cheese on it. I really like that, doing a fruit and cheese platter. My mom always does that and I really like it. So
yeah. And now both of these wines too, all stainless steel. We're not leveraging any oak for these wines.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So just to get back, you wanted to know about disgorging with the sparkling.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Oh,
So we do this in a bottle, right? You have it, it's in your bottle. It has the crown cap on it. As it comes down the line, we will add yeast and sugar to the bottle. I'll generally mix the sugar in the tank first, and then we'll add yeast as it comes down the line and crown cap it. And then depending on how much lees expression you're looking for, we may do up to 12 months of aging on those lees to help get some of that autolysis from the yeast cells to get a little more bread aromas and yeasty aromas that are traditional with champagne.
Right.
And so at that point, I'll check a few and make sure we've got some good carbonation, and we'll turn them upside down, and the yeast will start to settle down to the tip, and we'll put them in a saltwater ice bath, and that will get it cold enough to freeze the tip. And so you have all this yeast collecting down at the tip of the bottle, and then we'll have to, I do this by hand. I'm usually the one doing it. I've got a poncho on.
You're a brave man.
Yeah, I've got goggles, and you just pop it off with a beer cap opener like you normally would into a bucket, and it shoots and it ricochets back into your face. So I always have like yeast in the beard and wine dripping down my face and stuff.
I love it.
And so you get that yeast out and you get your finger over the top of it. You don't want to lose too much wine. We're generally losing between 9 and 12% from every bottle. And that goes into your mention about increased cost. You know, you're losing 12% of what you bottle,
right,
every time you do this. So I'll get my finger over it. I'll wait till the pressure to dissipate a little bit that's in there, and then pass it to the next person. And so we just run an assembly line like you would at any factory.
Yeah.
But all of our hands. And,
and did I read you do 16 cases at a time?
Yeah, we've started to up it. We're getting 16 bags of ice now at a time. So I'm doing it in a larger macro fermentation bin. We used to do it in smaller bins, but yeah, it's very. When I first got there, it was 8 cases, and now we're up to 16 to 20, depending on how long we can keep the crew going. So.
Love it. Well, April said you're looking great. So she likes your quarantine hair.
My quarantine hair, I tried to take care of it. When we did a test, my hair was like...
It looks great. Rosé, we've tasted French rosé in class before, and these are some of the things that you talked about: cheeses, Asian foods, sushi, again, like the bubbly, I think great, your white meats, tuna, seared tuna, and this wine would be delicious. And even Mexican food with a little bit of spice, because you have that strawberry, you have the stone fruit, the peaches in there. And the acidity is good. So I also say, if you're going to squeeze a lemon on it, this might be good with it too. I had this Barbera Rosé for dinner with a crab and asparagus pasta, and it was delicious. So
nice. All right.
A little. If anybody has any questions, I think I might have a couple of questions in the Q&A. This is great. Perfect. So We'll talk about this in a minute, but tell me a little bit about, they're asking how the name Crow Vineyards came to be. Judy and Roy Crow are obviously the founders. So the family name is there, and the property has been in their family, as I understand.
Yeah, for 3 generations. So Roy Crow is, I guess, the grandson of the founder of the farm. It started out as a dairy farm, and so they were running dairy cattle there and doing the milking operation, and then it transitioned a couple of times as far as strategy goes. I know in the 1980s, Roy Crow, obviously Crow, the name is from his last name, Crow Farm. Right. Yeah, so he worked that dairy cattle as, when he came back from college and, as a youth. So he knows how to work hard for sure. And that has been one of our founding principles. We really work hard. So
I love that.
But
yeah.
The farm Roy started the Crow insurance agency with Nationwide. He actually took the agency over for another gentleman, and his farming background allowed him to really help build that business. And so he always wanted to maintain the farm in the family. And when he and Judy got married, they were looking for a way to diversify the farm and really start to bring people in to experience the farm life, which, is missing in a lot of the nation. So,
they're right now, I mean, things are different, but when things get back to normal, they have a agritourism, like you can stay at, they have a little B&B type setup where you can stay at the winery. You have the organic cattle that you raise. And some of our people that are on tonight actually came to the vineyard and got your meat and got the wine together at the same time. So that's super exciting, and just different ways for people to experience vineyards. And, this is happening across the country. So it's so amazing to have it here in my home state. Now, Barbera as a rosé is amazing, but to me, the true sort of version, or the way people see Barbera, is as a red wine. And so I mentioned that you have experience not only making these Crow Vineyards wines, but also on the West Coast. So they're just to orient, because we have people from Connecticut and Pennsylvania, New Jersey and Maryland. So many of us have the Crow Vineyard Barbera, which I have right here. And then everyone has at least one Italian Barbera. I have the Pico Macario L'Avignon, and that's the one I'm gonna taste side by side with the Crow. But some of the folks out there have Barberas from Washington State, from Casa Smith, from California, from Amador and Soban Estate. And then a few people have a Lodi, California Barbera as well. So tell us a little bit about, you made Barbera on the West Coast, and now you've made Barbera on the East Coast. We're getting ready to double fist. I mean, awesome. Try these together. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, let's start with the New World, right? Because we're going to start with the Crow Vineyard. How does Barbera express itself in the New World? And then we'll taste the Italian and talk about the West Coast.
Okay, so I would say on the East Coast, same beautiful sort of berry fruit expression, especially when young. You get a lot of jammy fruit up front, but you also have that preserved acidity. So it stays a little bit leaner because the alcohol is a little bit lower than you would normally experience for the West Coast production. And because of that, it makes for a wonderful food pairing wine that is more in the older style.
Yep.
For sure.
And it seems a little bit, as compared, maybe a little bit lighter in color. Is that traditional for East Coast versus West Coast or Italy?
Yeah, so during maturation, obviously the sun has a lot to do with darkening the grapes. So here we drop a lot of fruit so that we can concentrate the fruit flavors and get them as ripe as possible.
Green harvesting.
Yep, and as vines age as well, the skins actually get thicker on the grapes as they mature. So our vineyard was planted, we have blocks from 2010, 2012. And so as those grapes get older, we expect to see darker color come on for sure.
Absolutely.
But the sun has a lot to do with it as well. So when you have more intense sun in California, the skins get a little bit darker there. So I'm always working with trying to get better extraction and leaving them on the skins, both in the cold soak process. I'll cold soak for 4 days before we start the fermentation for the red. And then after the fermentation's done, we will cold soak for 10 to 20, sometimes 30 more days, depending on how the skins are holding up, to get as much extraction as we can out of the grape.
Yeah. And one of the things I love about Barbera, I don't know if I said it earlier. I know, why don't I just marry Barbera? I'm just get it over with. But one of the things I love about it is that it's low in tannin. So tannin is that real grippy astringency you get from some reds like Cabernet Sauvignon, Petite Syrah, you know, really big reds. It's sort of either lower or moderate on that scale, but it has that good acidity you keep mentioning, which makes it food friendly. Yeah. One of the reasons why I love Pinot Noir too, because of that food friendly acidity. It does have a wide range of what you can pair it with, and it really like retains its freshness and makes it easy to drink when it's young.
Yeah, and higher acidity will make it age longer as well.
Yep.
These particular wines, I think one of the coolest things about Barbera is its versatility. You can see here that we've made it in 3 different styles. And that thin skin makes for a very approachable red wine. So if you're just starting to get into red wine, Barbera is really the training wheels to get you there.
I love that.
Because it's so approachable.
Yours sees, I believe I read 14 months of oak, but only 30% new.
Yeah, so this particular one was 30% new barrel. We didn't want to overdo it. Obviously, thin-skinned, you don't want to overpower the grape. Doing oaking is definitely a balancing act. With Barbera, the first year that I started producing there, we were very careful about how much heavy toasted oak or medium plus toasted oak we used, because we didn't want to inject too much smokiness into the wine through that aging process. So we wanted it to be tempered and nice and still show the fruit, which is, I mean, Barbera's brilliant character with the fruit.
Absolutely. Now, but you can sense in this a little bit of that smokiness for sure.
And some bacon spice as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've talked about old world versus new world in a previous Wine Down Wednesday, but I was explaining to them how in the new world, we tend to have a lot, you know, sometimes a lot more fruit, and we like to use a little bit more oak than you might see in the old world. But Barberas, depending on where you're getting them in Italy, if we just start to comparing yours to an Italian, some people are making, so my Pico Macario that I have right next door is all stainless steel. Some people have the Prunato Fialote Barbera. These are both from Asti, Barbera de Asti, so from the Asti region. The other Barbera region of note is Barbera de Alba. So they're just 2 side by side and slightly different, but both of these are Barbera de Asti, both all stainless. Mm-hmm. That being said, the other day I told you I had a great one from Vietti, because I was researching for this, Michael. I always give to my audience, but I had a great one from Vietti, and it had some oak, but big oak. Like they have those big boaties that are bigger than me, like tall, huge oak casts. So they're using some oak, but a little more neutral. And then there's some new wave winemakers that are taking Barbera and putting it in small oak, a little bit more of a new world.
Right.
Type.
So part of that fermentation if you're oaking during fermentation, it actually helps build the structure. It also helps solidify color as well. So exposure to oak during fermentation is really beneficial for that.
Yeah.
So in California, I made it both ways. I had the first 2 years that I was working with Barbera in Amador County from Cooper Vineyard in Plymouth. We did stainless steel. And then the following year, the 3rd year that I was there, we did oak. So doing it both ways, it was cool to pour them side by side in the tasting room and see people's reactions. So.
Absolutely. And chat us up in the window, you guys. I know everybody has an Italian and everybody has a new world. Let us know what you're comparing right now so we can see that. Because Michael has this experience making Barbera on the West Coast, I think he has some connections to some of the wineries that you guys are tasting. I mentioned some of this stuff here on the slide, but wine of the people. I think that because the Crow Vineyards is also a working farm. I know Judy and Roy love the idea of Barbera for that reason, because in Italy, Barbera is the wine that farmers would drink, that winemakers would drink.
The wine of the
right?
people, right?
The wine of the people. And I remember I've done a couple tours where I brought people to Italy, to Piedmont, and the Italians never understood us Americans, because we would be drinking these Barolos like at 10 o'clock at night. And they're like, these are serious meditation wines. You can't drink them late at night. And we're like, we're fine. We can drink them late at night. But they wouldn't, no one would really think of doing that in Italy. Like the Barbera, the Dolcetto, the everydays would be what people, Casamagna, Barbera d'Alba, awesome, Susan. I love that. And Barbera d'Alba, a little bit more structure, a little bit of a bigger, sort of firmer style many times than our Astis. And the Casa Smiths getting some eucalyptus. With many times I see that coming from the oak aging, right? Some of that.
Sometimes, and also
Yep.
vineyard proximity. If there are eucalyptus trees near the vineyard, that pollen will drift over onto the grapes, and
Love that.
you'll get it. So there are certain blocks that are closer to eucalyptus, and winemakers will be careful with their blending that they don't blend too much in, because they don't want it to be overpowering.
We got somebody doing Casquina La Zerba with burgers and fries. Oh, now I'm hungry. And the Saint Amant, which was the Lodi, they're tasting right next to that. So tell me, I know you spent a little time in the Sierra foothills. Lodi is not that far from there either. Tell me a little bit about how you see Barbera expressing itself specifically in California.
So in California, very jammy, a lot of blackberry fruits, sometimes some really intense raspberry. Yeah, the blackberry was really driving everything there. The alcohol was a lot higher. Like I said, we were trying to produce wines that had tempered acidity. And so we were picking it very late into the ripening stage. So you got these wines that were very high alcohol. It hit it well. But part of that high alcohol creates a thicker mouthfeel, because there's a lot of glycerol produced during the fermentation, depending on what yeast you use. So you see wines that have larger mid palates because of that. Yeah.
And Jocelyn, who is up in Framingham, Massachusetts, she's drinking the Sobin Estate Barbera, and I believe you said you had bought fruit from them, or knew the
we bought from Cooper Vineyard in
Cooper Vineyard. Okay.
Yeah, so I worked for a winery called Saloon Wine Growers there. Jacques Mercier has since retired, but it was a small boutique winery, just like what I work at now. I prefer to work at small boutique wineries because you get to try lots of cool things. So
yeah.
And
when you go corporate, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, so we were buying fruit from that vineyard, and we were putting their name on the bottle, which they really appreciated. So it said Cooper Vineyard as a byline. So
very cool.
And that kept us on the list. These were very sought after grapes, and so you didn't want to make the guy upset, because then you'd fall off the list. You wouldn't be able to get the grapes. So.
Well, some people, that's what they do, is just grow the grapes and sell to wineries. Not everybody does the whole winery tasting room and bottles their own wine. Some people just have the pride of growing amazing grapes and knowing that it goes to someone who's going to make it into, great juice.
Cooper had both, but they had a large enough plot that they were, I think there were 25, 30 wineries on their list seeking this fruit. And we were right up there. So it was great to get some. And we weren't huge buyers because we were small, but the fruit was always great quality. Yeah, I mean, here, the other thing is, you wanted to know some differences as far as processing is concerned. We were picking it later, I said that, but we weren't cold soaking quite as long because it started to leach color a lot faster. So we were in the 16-hour range before we pressed it for Rosé. So the extraction happened a little bit faster. Also, when they're cropping it in California, they're growing way more fruit per vine than we do here. We want the best quality fruit and the highest maturation at Crow. So we are dropping to 2 to 3 tons an acre. And we're keeping it in that 2 to 3 tons an acre range, and they're growing 6 to 8 tons an acre, especially in Lodi. Lodi tends to be able to crop a lot heavier because it's in that Central Valley.
Right.
At a ton of heat. If they need the grapes to grow more, they water them. Here, in the last 3-4 weeks, we're keeping our fingers crossed that we don't get any water. So there's an unpredictability, and you get way more variation on the East Coast year to year as far as structure and grape expression and how we're handling them in the winery and in the vineyard. So
yeah, vintage.
Very vintage.
In places like California, it can be very, very consistent, whereas
Right.
in places, like
yeah, it's very vintage driven, much like you would hear, oh, it was a good year in Florida, that kind of thing. So
exactly. I don't know. Let's hope it's a good year as far as the wine is concerned. I don't know if I would call this a good year so far.
Yeah, 2020 is something.
I guess it's going to get better. I keep saying it's going to get better. I know Jocelyn or someone out there, it was Frank and Ann, are having their burger and fries, I believe, which I'm super jealous of. But I also think Barbera, because of that grapefruit and acidity match, is great with things like poultry and chicken. It can have earthiness. What'd you say?
I said grass-fed Angus beef from
Yes, grass-fed Angus beef from Crow. And sometimes the earthiness to it makes it a great mushroom. Anything with mushroom sauces, I love.
Absolutely. I would definitely agree with that, especially with one that has some oak aging on it like ours.
Yeah.
You start to get more of that earthiness out of a wine like that. So how long can you age or shelf your Barbera wine? That's really individualistic on the wine itself. So depending on the style of wine, if it was bottled early and it's meant to be a big fruit forward wine and it has a lower acidity, depending on the winemaker's style, that one you'll start to lose some of the fruit as it ages over 5 years or so. But ones with higher acidity, they can go a lot further, and that's just the nature of acid and pH.
And what do you say, like 7 years, 10 years?
It's really wine specific, but yeah, 7 to 10 would be no problem. Yeah.
Perfect. And I love pizza, because of the acidity.
Right.
That tomato sauce is not going to be a big problem.
That's a great point. Yeah.
For pizza.
These wines that are produced in that old world style with that higher acidity, they can work against tomato sauce so well. And I mean, it makes sense with the cuisine. Why wouldn't you want this grape growing, right? So.
Exactly. And we've talked about, as a group, traveling, because we all love travel and traveling to vineyards. So I'm hoping our out-of-staters can come visit me and you here on the beautiful Eastern Shore. And so I had a little map here just for folks that I know we have a huge contingent from the Eastern Shore here tonight, but just in case you don't realize where that is, we're on the other side of the bay there, from Annapolis and Baltimore. We're the biggest wine region in Maryland, the Eastern Shore.
We also have a bay bridge with traffic, so if you feel homesick, you can get that.
In the yellow, folks, that's where we are. And then I took this from your website. It's from the Maryland Wine Association. I thought this was really great because what the Maryland Wine Association has done is created, I believe it's 8 different trails that people can travel. And then there's like a cider and a mead trail as well. But the trail that you're included on is this Rivers to Canal corridor. I circled in red where Crow is, signified by your bird there.
Yeah, so there are 2 other wineries very proximal to us. So the Chester River up to, the C&D Canal in Chesapeake City. Both Chestertown and Chesapeake City are beautiful old river-style towns with wonderful architecture, homes built in the 17 and 1800s. So really cool if you're into architecture as well. But yeah, we have partnered with 2 other wineries, Chateau Booty and Broken Spoke Vineyard and Winery, so that you can travel to each of those. And sometimes we have a bus running between the 3.
Ooh.
It's nice.
Will it take us back to Easton too?
To be chauffeured, yeah.
So question came up, is this near Galena?
It is very near Galena. Yeah, we're south of Galena, probably 3 or 4 minutes. So Kennedyville, Maryland is where we're located, which is a very small town south of Galena. So.
And I know you guys do so many great events. I've actually been part of some of the events that you've done. But people were asking if they come out to the winery, will they actually get to see some of the winemaking being done? Are there opportunities?
Yeah, so if you're interested,
or?
yeah, if you're interested in seeing grapes being processed, we are generally processing between late August through mid-October. That's really the time to see it. Okay. So I would call ahead, obviously, and be like, hey, are you guys picking today? You can actually come and join us for picking. We're always looking for volunteers. So you can come in the morning and pick with us. And then we always have a nice lunch together. And then some of us will head back out and finish up picking if there's any more to do. So we're always looking for picking volunteers and even people on the sorting table. So if you're interested in doing the I Love Lucy thing and picking out and shot berries and leaves and stuff that the destemmer didn't get, we look for volunteers for that as well. So
someone's asking if you do a grape stomp.
We do
normally.
So we have a couple of events where we do that. So there's a fundraising event we have every summer. We have a big event. It's usually like September 8th or 9th called Crow Fest. And
right, exactly.
We do a grape stomp for benefiting a local charity. So if you want to get
I've always wanted to do it, but I'm allergic to bees, so I stay away from the grape stomp because bees love grapes. I don't know what it is. Well, I know what it is. Sugar.
It's the sugar, yeah.
Exactly.
But we've been all right. I haven't seen too many bees out there when people are stomping away.
I love it. All right, maybe I'll have to actually get this done. Polly wants to know, do you actually make wine from the grapes that are stomped on?
No, Polly, those are composted.
Okay,
we don't do it like that anymore.
We're all sighing a relief right now, especially in this germophobic time.
So all of our stuff is stainless steel. When the grapes, the thing that simulates the stomping is at the end of the sorting table, we have two rollers that come together and crush the grapes. And Barbera is a larger berry, so we actually make them a little bit wider so that we don't over crush them. You don't want to beat the heck out of them. So
that's awesome. I think. Oh, wonderful. Someone just sent me a picture of all their great wines and their snacks. I think it's Susan that she's enjoying. So
red.
I want to be invited over next time. Oh, that's great. All right.
Distance my way into that party.
Exactly. Do you know, she doesn't make, so Old World, the Rouve, Barbera de Alba, Susan, awesome. Right next to our Crow. The New World, Old World, I think people are probably seeing a similar comparison, the Maryland or California or Washington versus the Italian, in that, you know, for me, there's oak on yours, but not on my Italian version. So that's a little bit different. And yours is maybe a little bit lighter in body than the one I have from Piedmont, but also
alcohol and growing characteristics. And they were, what year is that one? 2017, you said?
Yours is the 15.
15, but the one that you were tasting.
Oh, the one I'm tasting.
17.
Sometimes they hide it on the back. Yes, you're right. 17.
Okay. Yep. So
maybe also different years.
Market, looking to make a more fruit forward wine.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Perfect. I love it. All right. So what questions do you guys have? You have any questions for Michael? April was hoping that you would review the rosé production process a little bit more. I know we were enjoying two different rosés. We talked a little bit more, I guess, about the sparkling wine production, but let's just talk about the still rosé. I like to tell people it's like making weak tea because if we left those skins on longer, it might become like our red, right? But we don't do that. But I'd love to hear your description of.
Yeah, so there's several ways to make rosé. One of the ways that we use on the East Coast, and this is something they do in Bordeaux as well, is called the saignée method, which is the word to bleed. So basically you crush the grapes, they go into the tank, and you let them sit in the tank under cold conditions for about 3 days or so. I basically track the color the whole time. So I'm pulling 50 milliliter samples in clear tubes, and just tracking how we're getting color extraction until I get the pink that we're looking for.
So you're like a mad scientist when you're doing this.
Yeah, it's fun.
I can see it now with test tubes.
Right. So once we get that color we're looking for, we will actually open the valve on the tank at the bottom very slightly, and we'll drain it into a big stainless steel cart that we've enclosed with nitrogen to prevent oxidation of the juice. And then we will run that juice into a separate tank, and it will be fermented separately cold. And then what do we do with the skins that are left in the tank? We will actually make red wine out of those. So it's actually creating 2 wines from 1 grape, which is awesome. And
right,
by draining some of that juice out, you actually wind up concentrating the skin to juice ratio so that you have way more skin to juice in the tank, and you get a bigger, bolder red because of it. Bordeaux has used this for years. The other way that you can do it is where you pick the grapes, you crush them, you destem them and you crush them, and you let them soak on their own. And then after 48 hours or so, you take all of that must and you put it into your press. And so you press the skins off, they get composted, and you're left with pink juice. So one of them you make 2 wines from, one of them you make 1 wine from. So one is called the crush and press method, where the skins go and get composted immediately. The saignée method is where you make 2 wines. So and
you're doing both, or
we've done both.
Okay.
With this particular rosé, we actually did a third method. We whole cluster pressed it. So just like we were making with the method champenoise, when you're doing certain, like especially with a white, you want to whole cluster press it so that you don't beat the skins up too much.
Right.
And so with this one, we pressed it, and I let it sit in the tank on the skins for a while, and then we pressed it a little bit further and a little bit harder until we got the extraction we were looking for.
Gotcha.
So different expression for all of them. So yeah, it really depends the year that you're working with and how much expression you wanted. The grapes got very ripe in 2019. So we were looking for, we didn't want too much tannin expression. So we went with a whole cluster press that year. Previous years, obviously trying to build the biggest red that we could, we were using the saignée method. So
someone's asking, what do you do with the stems? Assuming that's composted as well.
They get composted as well. Yep.
Yep. And then how do you know what color to get? It just sounds like it's just you're monitoring it, and when it's there, you stop it. Right.
So just experience. You're going to lose a little bit of color throughout the winemaking process. So I always try and go a little bit beyond where our target color is, so that once everything is done and the wine is filtered and ready for bottle, we're back to that target color.
Gotcha. They love hearing your passion for what you do, which is amazing. Me too. And what kind of wine did in the Finger Lakes you were growing up? And I know people do it all over the country. I'm assuming you have some Italian in your background with the name.
I do. Yeah. So we had these big family dinners at the lake. My grandpa built a house on Cayuga Lake. And so my grandma, we would have meatball Sunday. That was our thing. So we would have all the extended family come over, and, obviously the house wasn't that big, but we had a garage. And so we would have these big tables in the garage, and we'd have like 30 people eating. So you had to make wine for these people. So the grapes.
You should do that at the vineyard. Do you do meatball Sunday?
We should start.
It would be amazing. Yeah. I would totally show up for that.
Absolutely. So yeah, lunchtime was, my grandma would make the meatballs flat and fry them in a cast iron, and we would have them on Italian bread. And then she would make a whole bunch of round meatballs that would get fried, and they would go in the sauce for the evening meal.
But what were the wines your grandfather, your father were making?
Yeah, so my grandpa was getting a grape called de Chaunac, which I would characterize, it's a French-American hybrid developed at Cornell. I would characterize it more like a Merlot. So we were using that a lot. I guess when he made wine with his grandfather, they were getting grapes from California. So, but we were principally working with the de Chaunac grape, and then when my grandpa passed away, I took over that home winemaking production. And I was actually going out to Finger Lakes Vineyards and buying Cabernet Sauvignon, because at the time I was a cab man and I loved
I know a lot of us start out that way. Yeah.
So I would go out and I would call them up and I would say, listen, I'm looking for 200 pounds of cab. What can you do for me? And they're like, well, we're picking it on Wednesday. You want to come out? And I would be there on Tuesday and I would grab all the best clusters.
Overnight.
That's good.
That's awesome.
And I would take them home and I would hand stem them all. So,
wow.
And then we had a big antique crank crusher with like these cast iron rollers that would come together to crush them. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. And my brother also helped with the operation, and he went to Cornell for viticulture and oenology. So he's a winemaker now.
Where is he a winemaker?
He's in Kennedyville, New York. He works at Constellation Brands.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Well, they're kind of big.
They're big.
Laurie is up in the what are your Finger Lakes? Her question is, what are your Finger Lakes favorites?
Okay, so
upstate New York. She's not in the Finger Lakes, but not far.
All right. So on Seneca Lake, there's a region called the Hector region. The lake's a little bit deeper there. And I really love the wines from Damiani. If you're into New World style red production, he also makes some really cool stuff with Lemberger, which is a German red grape that has some funky flavors to it. But they are really one of the premier red makers in the Finger Lakes. And then right down the road from them, there's another winery. The name is slipping me now. I had it. And then I forgot.
Yeah, Damiani, we got that one. We're definitely, that's another destination that we may visit as a group. Or at least that's what we were dreaming about last week.
Yeah, so I love that place. And right up the street from there, there's two others that are fantastic. So you really can't go wrong with that Hector region.
That's awesome. Well, if you think of them, email them to me and I'll put them in our Facebook group so people have them.
I can look them up. So when we're having our party, I will.
Yeah, are you going to join us for the after party?
Yeah, you know it.
That would be awesome. All right. Speaking of, I think we answered, check the Q&A to make sure. I think we answered, is it spelled Hector, like Hector?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So we need a bus tour, everybody's saying. Okay,
yeah, so a really nice waterfall there. There's a lot of beautiful gorges to hike as well. So
I just wanted to thank you, Michael, for joining us. This has been so amazing. I love the Barbera grape. I love the old world and the new world and all the different expressions of it, because to me, that's what makes wine interesting, because I don't want it to taste the same every time I have a Barbera, because that's boring.
Yeah.
So what's really cool is I love that you guys are making the sparkling rosé that I love, the still rosé that I really enjoyed over dinner, and then the red version when I want something heavier, that sort of wind down. That red's my wind down at the end of the night kind of thing. And I love just the similarity and difference to the Italian. So I thank you for sharing your all your great knowledge with us. I love Judy and Roy and Crow Vineyards. If you get a chance to go there, absolutely
please
go.
Come and visit. We love to see people. Obviously, we're doing the drive up pickup thing right now. So you call ahead, make your order, and then you can pick it up. But hopefully, fingers crossed here, we'll start doing some social distancing table outdoor service. So we're excited.
So I'm just posting the after party link, because when I stop the recording, then end the movie, you guys would use this Zoom link to come to the after party, which is now. Next Wednesday, we're having a very special Wine Down Wednesday. Michael, I don't know if you know this, but there's a few of the members on here who kind of gave me a push to start doing these, which has given me a whole purpose in life and the ability to share what I do and what I love, and great people like you. And so as a thank you to everyone who's been to any of my Wine Down Wednesdays so far, this is the 4th. I'm doing a free session next Wednesday, and I'm calling it Break Open That Bottle Night. And the backstory, Michael, is that last week on the after party, a bunch of us, Lori Bacon and Carol and Hugh and the Horners and a bunch of other people were talking that we have all these great wines in our wine cellar, fridges, whatever, that we never open.
Yeah, this is
kind of crazy. What'd you say?
This is the perfect time to treat yourself.
Exactly. Why are we not opening these great wines? So next Wednesday, everyone that's been to one of mine will be invited for free, and they can invite one guest, which is awesome. And I am just gonna open up this wine fridge and start popping some like ridiculous bottles. And I invite everyone to come on and join me and pop their ridiculous bottles. Michael, you're welcome to join us and do the same.
Oh, thank you.
So that'll be next Wednesday. You'll get an email tomorrow about it, so you can join me, and you'll get the recording from here, the slides from here tonight, as well tomorrow morning. And then on the 27th, we're going to do California Dreaming. We're going to do Pinot and Chard from California and compare them to French versions. So
oh, cool. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Our next one. But right now, we're headed to the after party. Copy that link right now. But thank you so much, Michael. I love Barbera Bash, and I'll see you guys right now in the after party. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop the recording.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.